מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
Shabbat Shalom. So nice to gather together, even on this digital platform, this Shabbat evening to welcome our day of rest. I'm Rabbi Daniel Reeser. I'm joined in the leadership of tonight's service by our cantorial student intern, Isaac Sonnet Asor, who's there on the keyboard. Sitting next to him on the flute on that last setting is his wife, Caroline Sonnet Asor. So glad to be joining together this Shabbat evening as we welcome a new Hebrew month. This is a very special Shabbat tonight. On the Hebrew calendar, it's a Shabbat that's called Shabbat Shekalim, which has a lot of different layers of meaning, but on its most basic level, it's the Shabbat that welcomes in the Hebrew month of Adar. Adar is the month in which we celebrate the holiday of Purim, and a little later on in the service, during the announcements, I'll share a little bit about what is going to happen here at WRT to celebrate Purim. So this Shabbat kind of welcomes the Purim season. And if we think back to last year, then we'll recall that the arrival of Purim didn't just mean the coming of a fun and festive holiday. It also meant last year the arrival of major changes in our world. Purim, or thereabouts, was when the pandemic arrived to our area, to Lower Westchester. So this Shabbat, as we both welcome Purim and start to get ourselves into the Purim spirit, we'll also start to prepare ourselves, not just for that holiday, but also start to prepare ourselves for the marking of 1 year since COVID has made its way through our community and had such devastating impacts in so many different ways. To help us welcome Shabbat and to mark this special Shabbat Shekalim, this lead up to Purim, let us begin by lighting lights for Shabbat. If you have lights with you there at home, please feel free to kindle them now.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
as we enter into Shabbat and we begin this Purim season, I thought we could talk just for a moment about the Purim story. And this story is at its core a fairy tale. The Purim story is a story of royalty and bravery in a far-off land. And as we read the Megillah, we get to dress up, take on a new identity, and we imagine a world far zanier, yet far grander than the one that we experience in our daily lives. Yet we don't have to wait for Purim to experience this grandeur. The opening of the Shabbat liturgy that we call Kabbalat Shabbat, the welcoming of Shabbat, imagines Shabbat as a queen to be honored. Just as we anticipate Queen Esther arriving on the scene in Shushan to save the Jewish people from the wicked Haman, each week, our Shabbat queen liberates us from the efforts and stresses of the week, turning the world into a sacred kingdom. And so to honor her arrival, we sing a series of biblical poems that are aptly named the Royal Psalms for their emphasis on God's majesty. So, may this season for all of us be one of imagination to turn our most common spaces into palaces. We continue with the first royal psalm, L'chu Neranena. Come together, everyone, and sing. L'chu Neranena l'Adonai, Nariya letzor ishenu. L'chu Neranena l'Adonai, Nariya letzor ishenu. Nekadma fanav betoda, bizmirot nariya lo. Nekadma fanav betoda, bizmirot nariya lo. L'chu neranena l'Adonai, nariya letzor ishenu. L'chu neranena l'Adonai, nariya letzor ishenu. Nekadma fanav betoda, bizmirot nariya lo. Nekadma fanav betoda, bizmirot nariya lo. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. queen. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקרקלה פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקרקלה פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. You may rise and face the door. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. The Shabbat, we also honor the yahrzeit of WRT's beloved cantor Stephen Merkel. Cantor Merkel was, among many things, an advocate for the grandest forms of classical reform music. Some of these melodies have found their way into even the standard melodies that we continue to sing today. One such melody is that by the musical giant Louis Lewandowski, the 19th century composer in Germany. and his setting of the psalm for the Shabbat day, Tzadik Katamar, the righteous will bloom like a date palm, is a melody that I have grown up with, that I have always loved hearing here at WRT, and thought we could honor Cantor Merkel's memory and legacy with this, well, I think, royal musical setting, Tzadik Katamar. Tzadik Katamar Yivrach Ke'erez Balevanon Yizgeh Shetulim Beveit Bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim berananim We continue with our public call to worship, Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amecha Havta Amcha Havta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu Uvkumeinu nasiach bechukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha Uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu Uvahem negei yom ha'balayla negei yom ha'balayla Ve'ahavatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim v'amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם נאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. We continue with the Song of Liberation, Mi Chamocha, who is like you, Adonai. Mi Chamocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha, Nedar ba'kodesh, Norah tehilot, Osef elev, Norah tehilot, Osef elev, Malchutecha לפני משה ומרים, זיירי, זיירי, אנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomrenu l'chaim. Our ancestors wrote these words many generations ago, cause us to lie down in sleep, O eternal our God, and help us to awaken to life renewed. They wrote these words looking around at the world that they inhabited and seeing that their environment was not always a safe place in which they could go to sleep. Their walls were thinner than ours. The threats of danger were more easily able to penetrate through their doors, and they understandably felt fear when they went to bed at night and were thankful in the morning to arise to a day refreshed, alive, and ready to confront whatever the sunrise would bring them. And we who are living through the times of this coronavirus pandemic may be able to channel some of that ancient wisdom, some of that ancient fear, that ancient anxiety when we go to bed at night, hoping that we will wake up the next morning refreshed and renewed and restored, ready to go about our day's work. Maybe the fear is the fear of catching the virus itself, a thing that seemingly we don't talk a lot about in our public discourse. We talk about our loneliness. We talk about the impact that the upheaval of society has had on our lives. How often do we talk about our own fear of getting sick? For others of us, the anxiety isn't so much about getting sick as it is the anxiety of all the pressures that this upheaval has created in our lives. It's hard to get a good night's sleep when our world looks nothing like it ever did before, and the demands on our time are greater than they've ever been. And so we join our ancient ancestors and the entire human family who is alive today during this crisis in saying, Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu. Blessed are you, our eternal God. May you cause us to lie down in peace. Put a shelter over us as we sleep. Allow us to discharge our anxiety, discharge our fear, and wake up in the morning refreshed, knowing that you have been with us while we slept. Amen.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת לעשות, את השבת לדורותם, לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי מתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך Adonai. Open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'koneh Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. We continue now with a few moments for silent reflection, or with the words of the prayer book or the words of your own heart. The Book of Esther depicts a time of honor and celebration. These famous words, La Yehudim Haita Ora, Vesimcha Vesason Vikar, the Jewish people have enjoyed light, and joy, and celebration, and honor, have made it into our weekly Shabbat liturgy, when we bid farewell to the Shabbat Queen. We add to the teaching of Esther, Ken Tihye Lanu, that we will enjoy these things again in our own time. This Shabbat and this Purim season, may we all find light and joy and celebration and honor.
ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר. ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר. כן תהיה לנו, תהיה לנו, תהיה לנו. כן תהיה לנו, תהיה לנו, תהיה לנו. היהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר. ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון
Shabbat Shalom. As we mentioned at the beginning of our worship this evening, this Shabbat is a special Shabbat in that it's the Shabbat that announces the Hebrew month of Adar. And Adar is the month in which we celebrate Purim. And those words which we just sang come from the book of Esther, the scroll that tells the story of Purim. So it's special in that way. And it's also special as well because Purim last year was the time when the coronavirus arrived in Lower Westchester. And so as we mark our entry into the Purim season, we also remind ourselves that we're entering the 1-year marker of having lived in these COVID-19 conditions and all that that upheaval has brought to our world. And I received a message the other day from a prominent institute of Jewish learning saying that they're having a special Purim program to not only welcome the holiday, but also to mark this 1 year that we've all lived through. And the name of the program is The Year the World Turned Upside Down. And I thought to myself, the year the world turned upside down. Yes, that is a lot like what this year has felt like. Everything that we're used to, everything that's familiar has kind of been turned on its head. The world feels very unfamiliar. Even our normal routines have been interrupted. Small things and big things altogether. Yes, indeed, the world does feel like it's turned upside down. And at the same time, while I admire the name, The Year the World Turned Upside Down, I also recognize that that only tells part of the story. Because in some ways, COVID didn't turn our world upside down only. Some ways, COVID just revealed things about our world that have always been true. Things that were there all along didn't get turned on their head, rather had the cover taken away from them and allowed us to see things that maybe we were willfully blind to before. And both of these themes, turning the world upside down on the one hand, and on the other hand, things that we're maybe willfully blinded to, but suddenly have our eyes opened to see, both of those ways of interpreting this past year are themes that are deeply embedded in the Purim story. So this evening, I'd like to explore those two parts of the Purim story and see how they might help us to understand what this year has been, both the ways in which our world's been turned upside down and the ways in which our world has been revealed to us, things that were true always, now apparent. So let's take a look together at a little bit of tradition regarding Purim. The name of this talk, that's too formal. If this talk were to have a name, it'd be called The World Turned Upside Down or The World Revealed. So let's start by exploring the genre of the book of Esther. We oftentimes get it in our heads that the whole Bible is just one genre, and that genre is scripture. And that because it appears in the Bible that we have to treat it with the utmost dignity, and that every message that's in there is intended to be a moral message and one that is intended to purify us. But if we're honest, we know that the Hebrew Bible actually is not just one book. It's many books. It's a whole library full of books, and each of those books has its own genre. There's poetry in the book of Psalms. There's narrative in the Torah. There's philosophy in the book of Proverbs. And Esther, the book of Esther that tells the story of Purim, is rightly understood as a comedy. So what is comedy exactly? Well, one definition of comedy is that things get turned upside down. Things that weren't supposed to happen do happen. There's sort of a slapstick nature to the book of Esther. And let's take a look at exactly how the book of Esther has a sort of comedic element to it. The people who were supposed to get it in, for the people who were supposed to have a punishment delivered to them, they end up prevailing. And the people who were supposed to be delivering that punishment, they wind up being the ones who are punished. That was very ineloquent, but I hope you'll feel what I mean when we take a look at this text from the book of Esther, trying to illustrate the point. So this comes from the second to last chapter of the book of Esther, illustrating how Esther is somehow a comedy. And so, on the 13th day of the 12th month, the book of Esther reports, that is the month of Adar, the month that we're beginning just now in our Hebrew calendar, when the king's command and decree were to be executed, the very day on which the enemies of the Jews had expected to get them, the Jews, in their power, the opposite happened. The Hebrew for the opposite happened here is v'nafochu, and the Jews instead got the enemies in their power. This is what happens in the book of Esther. It was supposed to be that the Jews experienced suffering, and instead Haman, who had it out for the Jews, Haman and his sons experienced suffering. And while there definitely is a moral element to that, really, if we think of it like Larry the Three Stooges, Larry, Moe, and Curly, sometimes the people on the top are brought low, and the people who are low are brought high, and there's something that's funny about it, something that makes us laugh. And that is one way, just one of many ways, honestly, that Esther might be understood as comedic, that the opposite happened. And the Hebrew again is v'nafochu, which literally translated would mean it got turned upside down. The thing that was supposed to happen got turned upside down, and the opposite happened. And we ourselves have seen this year that in a lot of ways, our world has been hafuch. Our world has been upside down. Here are just a couple of ways in which our world has been turned upside down over these past almost 12 months now. Our schools look nothing like they used to before. Businesses are running in completely different ways and in many ways suffering on account of the way the world has been turned upside down. There's unemployment like we never would have imagined. In a booming economy, suddenly there's massive degrees of unemployment. People are feeling lonely. Where we used to rely so much on our social connections, there is deep loneliness on account of our world being turned upside down. There's a certain monotony. We're used to having some variation between the weekdays and the weekend, between one season and another, between special times like holidays and the normal times of the week. Now our world has been turned upside down and we experience sort of a drab monotony all the time. We're used to being able to travel, and now travel is something that's been restricted and is hard to do and do safely. Our holiday celebrations have been lost. Our life cycle moments have been upended in so many ways. People who've been planning for a wedding or for a bar mitzvah, the image they had in mind of their special day often ends up being different from what they actually have. People who are burying a loved one or gathering together in the house of mourning, the ways that we usually are comforted have been turned upside down. We've had to find new ways to go about our life cycle moments. There's no live music. There's no live sports. The way that we vote has been turned upside down. The world of dating, if you know anyone who is dating right now, they'll tell you that this is an extremely time to be looking for a mate, because we're supposed to be cautious about how intimate we are with people and only be intimate with people that we trust and know. The world of dating has been turned upside down. And of course, most obviously, the way our world has been turned upside down is the fact that someone can be very healthy one day and not have taken any outrageous risks, and the next day wind up ill, and God forbid, and it happens nonetheless, even catch this virus and perish from it and die. Our world has indeed, in so many ways, been turned upside down, just like the world got turned upside down in the story of Purim. Although in the Purim story, that reversal was good. It's a thing that we celebrated. It was something that was funny and something that made the outcome a positive one for the Jews. That motion of flipping is one that we've experienced very much this year, but in the opposite direction, not for good, often for bad. Let's take a look at the other possible theme, the other way of understanding this past year, not of a world turned upside down, but rather of a world revealed, of things that have always been true but hidden from our sight, suddenly now brought plainly into view. And to do that, we want to discuss a thing that's unique in the book of Esther. Most books of the Hebrew Bible have as, if not its main character, then certainly one of its main characters, the figure of God. And the book of Esther mentions God not even once. There's one very oblique reference, a possible oblique reference to God in the book of Esther. But God is certainly not central, definitely on the margins in the book of Esther, which has led scholars to point out that maybe Esther is sort of a secular Jewish book. Today, we of course know that there are such things as secular Jewish books. Jonathan Safran Foer is a secular Jewish writer. Dara Horn is a secular Jewish writer. They're Jewish, but they're not religious writers. They're secular writers. Maybe the book of Esther should be understood similarly as a non-theistic, a non-God-oriented, secular book. Okay, that's possible. Of course, that led the ancient rabbis to ask, well, wait a minute, if this is a secular book, then how did it wind up in the Hebrew Bible in the first place? And so the ancient rabbis had to try and find some connection between the book of Esther and their theocentric, their God-oriented worldview. And so here's what the ancient rabbis said. They said, well, every book of the Hebrew Bible has to somehow be referenced in the Torah. So where does the Torah imply the name Esther? Like, where is there a hint of the book of Esther in the Torah? And they say, well, there's a verse there in the Torah that says that God will surely conceal. And the Hebrew word for surely conceal is haster astir. And you can hear that the word astir sounds and looks a lot like Esther. So I, God, will surely conceal my face, the book of Deuteronomy says. And the ancient rabbis say, when God says there in the book of Deuteronomy that God's going to hide God's face, that's referring to the book of Esther, that in the book of Esther, God's face has been hidden. God is blocked from view. And God was there all along, but just sort of hidden from our view. And we ourselves have experienced that this year. We have seen things that were hidden from our view revealed to us. Things have been pulled away. We've actually had this strange dynamic of, on the one hand, things that were formerly hidden from view are being revealed to us. And at the same time, when we go out in public, we have to sort of hide. We have to mask ourselves. And at the same time, when we're here in a Zoom world, this is actually more intimate than we ever usually are. On a normal Friday night, if I am standing on the bima and you're sitting there in the pews, you're not 3 inches from my face the way that we are right now. There's a certain intimacy that has been provided. And at the same time, when we're in more public settings, we have to hide, we have to conceal.
So if the book of Esther has this dynamic of God's being concealed inside the narrative, well, what in our world had formerly been concealed and is now being revealed to us? Many things, many things. We have learned, it's been revealed to us through this pandemic that humans are more interconnected than we ever even really knew. We go around the world thinking I'm me and you're you, and there's not a whole lot between us unless we have some kind of relationship, unless we have some sort of exchange or dialogue. But we now know being in intimate space with somebody, we're deeply connected to one another. We've seen that it's an interconnected world, not just between individuals, but between countries. The virus has transcended boundaries of borders. There's much more connection between so-called us and so-called them than we might have realized before. That's been revealed to us. We already knew that retail was something that was sort of on the decline, and this pandemic has only accelerated that and shown us how our world of commerce is changing. That's something that we maybe had blinded our eyes to and said, like, sure, sometimes I go into stores, but maybe I do a lot of my shopping online. Now we see that online shopping, that retail is a thing that we can do in different ways. That's been revealed to us. We've seen how vacuums in leadership have led to the proliferation of this virus and also to the ways that the virus has impacted our world and our lives. We've had leadership vacuums revealed to us. The fact that there's strong distrust of science in our society has been revealed to us. Our extreme partisanship has been revealed. The excesses of social media, when so many of us spend so much of our time indoors and online and in front of screens, we've seen how social media can have a really sometimes positive impact to connect us with one another, but also sometimes a really negative impact, allowing us to go down rabbit holes that we might not have gone down before if we had other outlets to spend with our time. This world, the pandemic has revealed our xenophobic instincts, our wanting to shut others out who are different from us for fear that maybe they're going to infect us. Our world has revealed, the pandemic has revealed to us how overprogrammed we all are, how packed our schedules are, and how in fact we can do with much less. If we slow the pace of our lives down a little bit, we can still find degrees of satisfaction. The pandemic has revealed income inequality, healthcare access inequality. It's revealed the differential between people who work at desks and people who work in service jobs, a differential that's been there all along, but that has brought into greater relief, that's been revealed to us all the more so by the arrival of the virus. And importantly, if this list weren't mostly negative, it's also revealed our human instinct to help. It's been inspiring to see how healthcare providers, how teachers, how cashiers at grocery stores, how delivery people, and how ordinary citizens have been putting themselves in harm's way in order to help one another, to make sure that there's enough food to go around, to make sure that people who are having trouble finding vaccine appointments are able to get appointments. The virus has revealed, if we didn't know it deep enough in our hearts already, our human instinct to help. So both of these things are true. The virus has both turned our world upside down, changed things in ways we never could have imagined before, and at the same time, it's shown us things that we always had there all along and that we just never really were aware of. It's both been a world turned upside down and a world revealed. And so to conclude, I wanted to share one last thought on the holiday of Purim, a holiday that contains both of those themes right within it. And it's the following. There's a strange and interesting quote from Maimonides, from the Rambam, considered to be maybe the greatest Jewish mind of all time. Maimonides, a medieval Spanish Jewish scholar, writes a strange sentence. He says, all of the books of the prophets and all of the writings will be annulled in the days of the Messiah, meaning when the Messianic world arrives, we're no longer going to read the Haftarah. We're no longer going to read Isaiah. We're no longer going to read Psalms. We're no longer going to read the book of Judges or Joshua or any of the other books of the Hebrew Bible except for the Torah and one other book, apart from Megillat Esther. One book that we'll continue to read even in the Messianic era will be the story of Esther, the story of Purim. And philosophers have puzzled over this for a long time. Why exactly is it that Maimonides believed that the book of Esther would be one book that would last even into some Messianic era? And there are many different ways to interpret this. But one basic way is that the themes of the book of Esther are so deeply true about the human experience, reveal such innate facts about what it means to be a person in this world, that even in the Messianic era, the themes of the book of Esther will continue to exist, which we might take to say, if the book of Esther is that deeply true, then the things that have come into our lives on account of this pandemic, the ways our world has been turned upside down, and also the way that our world has been newly revealed to us, those things will be as long-lasting as the book of Esther, that our world will forever be changed as a result of this. Let's work together to enter into that new reality step by step, cautiously, not even sometimes knowing where it is that we're going, but sure that the world will forever be changed and that we can be agents in helping to make that change and make it a change that is for the betterment of all of us. Amen. We'll turn our hearts and our thoughts now to people who are in need of prayers for healing. And if there's someone you're thinking about this Shabbat who's in need of healing, I'd invite you to say their name aloud if you'd like, or to hold them in your hearts, knowing that we as a WRT community hold the following people in our hearts for prayers for healing: Ezra Yarden ben Harav Elkanah Leib veHarabah Eliana Leah, Anthony and Elizabeth Denker, Mordechai ben Yaakov, Rolly Corin, Deborah Kapnick, Nicole Shusi, Neil Glaskell, Joshua Gendel, Andrea Rayner, Chaim ben Sipora, Masha Batsora, Leah Greenspan, Aviva Tzila bat Esther Bela, Dan Sokolov, Jeffrey Millman, Cheryl Brickman, Chava Batsara, Eliyahu Chaim ben Fradel, Sheila Freed, Tanya Romanoff, Yitzchak Yona ben May, Malka Tzipora bas Rachel, Tamar bat Malka, Heschel Meir ben David Achana, David Ze'ev ben Fruma Etzel, Mark Wolf, Shai Aviad ben Balfora, Alter Shmuel ben Chava Leah. And if you have other names to add to our prayers for healing, you're welcome to add it in the chat in whichever digital platform you're joining us on as we join together now in our Misha Berach prayer. Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Our concluding prayers begin on the screen in front of us with the words Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach La'adon HaKol, La'tet Gedula Liotzer Bereshit, Shelo Asanu Kigoye Ha'aratzot, Velo Samanu Kimishpachot Ha'adama, Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem, Vegora Leinu Kechol Hamonam, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Our thoughts turn now to people whom we have loved and lost, people who the end of their life has turned our world upside down, and who the end of their life revealed to us how much it was that they meant to us. And I'd invite you, if you're remembering someone this Shabbat, when you hear their name said aloud, to please feel free to rise in your place. This Shabbat, Westchester Reform Temple is remembering Peter Haller, husband of Lauren Haller, father of Liam, Olivia, and Isabel Haller, son of Pauline and Eric Haller, and brother of Lori Esty, David Haller, and Andrea Haller. Paul Rabinowitz, father of David Rabin, Nancy Joan Rabinowitz, mother of David Rabin, Sylvia Alderman, mother of John Ziggy Alderman, Sandra Gershman, mother of Karen Klein, Stuart David Byron, father of Linda Byron Glucksman and Lisa Joan Bernstein, Joel Sachs, father of Lori Harrison. And on their yahrzeit, on the anniversary of their death, we remember Samuel Alter, Sylvan Beck, Daryl G. Berman, Irene Boysnack, Marvin McCormick, Howard Braun, Madeline Calamari, Erwin Cohen, Ruth Cuba, Ruth Mayers, Shirley Del Borgo, Abraham Dranitz, Philip Fram, Martin Friedman, Robert Friedman, Ann Gatoff, James Barry Gavisser, Ruth Geltzer, Juliette Goldsmith, Susan Greenfield, Gloria Herman, Rose Jareski, Sidel Jordan, Mildred Ruboy Cantor, Sydney M. Starr, Leon Katz, Lorraine Levin, Morris Levine, Aaron Lichtenstein, Connie Lipkin, Bernice Lorinsky, Rebecca Marcus, Cantor Stephen Merkel, Harvey Nova, Lawrence J. Nussbaum, Benjamin Pike, Robert Plattis, Moselle Pollock, Samuel Rand, Shirley Reich, Edith Richmond, Rose Rottenberg, Stanley J. Schaefer, A. Jerome Schiffer, Gussie Schnitzer, Leonard Schwartz, Michael Ralph Seidel, Arnold Serper, Estelle Schulman, Eleanor Singer, Deborah Smith, Ted Strauss, Barbara Tabor, Dottie Wallerstein, Alvin A. Weingarten, David Weiss, Renee Werner, Catherine Wright. If there are any names that have not yet been said aloud or any that I've inadvertently mispronounced, I invite you to say them now. The words of the Mourner's Kaddish can be found on the screens in front of us. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, b'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mivarach le'olam u'lamei almaya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit ale, v'yit halal, shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all who mourn, to which we say, Amen. A few announcements before we conclude our service. Our Shabbat celebrations don't end tonight, but rather continue tomorrow morning with Torah study at 9 a.m. There'll be a 9 o'clock minyan, followed by a short opportunity to schmooze with one another on Zoom, and then an opportunity for learning. Please join our Torah study community at 9 a.m. for learning. And importantly, we are inviting everyone to please save the date for Sunday, May 16th, as we participate in our annual Margie and Morgan Miller Scholar in Residence program, and also tribute to our outgoing temple president, Marcy R. Harris, thanking her for her 4 years of service to this congregation. Our special guest presenter and scholar will be Dr. Andrew Rayfeld, president of Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. Please come and join us to hear Dr. Rayfeld's brilliant teaching, to thank and honor Marcy for her 4 years of service to this congregation. That's on Sunday, May 16th. The festivities for the entire congregation kick off at 2:30 p.m. May 16th. Two other brief announcements before we conclude. Purim is coming up, in case you didn't get the message throughout our service, and there is a lot going on here at WRT for Purim this year on Thursday night, on Friday night, and also on Sunday morning. Many different ways for many different ages and stages. Check our e-communications or our calendar to find the right opportunity for your family or for your cohort. There's lots of different things happening. Make sure to find the one that's just right for you. Last but not least, we invite everyone to join us on Friday, March 12th, as we mark with a special ritual here during our Friday night Shabbat service the 1-year anniversary of living together through this COVID crisis. Come together for a special night of prayer, of song, of reflection, of making sense of this challenging past year that the whole world has lived through together. Please come and join us on Friday, March 12th during our 6:15 p.m. service. Those are our announcements. Why don't we conclude our time together by giving thanks for everything in our life that is sweet. Isaac, would you please?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, bori peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. Zikaron nemase bereshit, ki hu yom techila lemikrai kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim. Ki banu vacharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol hamim, V'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava u'beratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. And let's now give thanks for everything in our life that helps to sustain us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.